Hey guys, welcome back to the neighborhood. Today we've got the LetShuoer tapes in the house thanks to Farsal the Wizard. If you're not familiar with Farsal, he is a wizarding audiophile who's a bit of a character. But in any case, he's fun to watch. So check out his channel at the conclusion of this review, especially if you want to put a mischievous smile on your face. Anyhow, I think I may get my set of the new Tape Pros in tomorrow. But let's get hyped with a classic review at this point in time for now, with the original LetShuoer 09 tapes. Let's get into it. So this IEM is somewhat similar to another IEM that I previously reviewed on the channel, the LetShuoer Singer. Both the Singer and the tapes are magnetostatic IEMs with an additional dynamic driver to handle the low end. This has caused some confusion, as both the tapes and the Singers were originally advertised as electrostatic IEMs, but unfortunately this is not actually the case. The magnetostatic driver is apparently a different type of technology that was being passed off as an electrostatic erroneously. And honestly, this makes sense, as neither of the LetShuoers sound anything like electrostatic drivers to me. Having only heard the Singers and the tapes to date, it seems that the magnetostatic driver might simply not be capable of reaching the resolution and detail of an electrostatic driver. But I guess only time will tell, as more IEMs use this technology and implementation only improves. Like I said, I'm getting hyped for my new Tape Pro that's coming in the mail tomorrow. So the build of the original tapes is pretty stout. They're made out of metal and are relatively heavy. I like the looks of these things, as they remind me of Laserbeak from Soundwave from Transformers. The unit I was provided with from Farsal has some mild signs of wear on it, where the black paint has rubbed off on the edges of the metal housing, so that might be something to be aware of. The cable that comes with this set is decently nice. It's a tiny bit stiff, but not the worst. The connection of the earphone itself was iffy at times, however, as it cut in and out every now and then, so I ultimately switched to a balanced tri-point cable after some time. My understanding is that the new versions of this earphone also come with a balance cable, which may have resolved this issue, but I was not provided with this cable, so I had to employ my own. I will also note that I tested balance versus non-balanced operation here, and I could not discern any notable differences for this set. The black tips that come with the set were relatively thin and produced some unbalanced sonics, so I experimented with tips to find a more favorable sound. CP100s offered the best fit for the smaller diameter of the stem, and produced the most balanced sound in comparison to stock and other tips. Fit was okay, and the tapes were rather heavy, and the bottom edge of the corners of the earphone did press slightly into my anti-helix. So unlike the Singers, which were lightweight and comfortable for extended listening sessions, I might not be able to deal with the tapes for longer listening sessions, especially not all day long. So what do the LetShuoer tapes sound like? It has a sub-bass emphasis with decent impact, but both its impact and sub-bass emphasis also contributed to some listening fatigue rather quickly. Perhaps because it has a drier and somewhat airier sub-bass, it's missing some liquidity from the mid-bass and upper bass regions. Additionally, there is some shoutiness to the vocals in the upper mid-range, even if the mid-range was boxed in a bit and somewhat narrower than other parts of the sound signature. The intensity of the tape's shoutiness was dependent on the source, its volumes, and track particularities, however. For example, on The Queens of the Stone Age's No One Knows, the sonics here with the tape were mostly offensive and intolerable, even though they were better on other sets. In general, I found that the tapes perform better on smoother, warmer, lower-powered sources, rather than stark, neutral, higher-powered ones. Shoutiness was decreased most on the Gold Note DS10 and somewhat on the iFi Zen DAC, compared to other starker sources such as the Centrance DAC Portable or the THX AAA 789. Surprisingly, my Note 8's headphone jack actually produced my favorite sounds for the tape. Volume levels also influence the shoutiness of the tapes. At higher listening volumes, clarity generally decreased as harshness increased, while at lower listening volumes things smoothed out a bit more, but this also generally resulted in obfuscated details somewhat. While I did not always have an immediate negative reaction to the tape's shoutiness, my eardrums still began to hurt after listening beyond 15 to 20 minutes, and they felt like the end of my ear canals had been through a prize fight. I don't think it's too harsh to describe the tapes as assaultive immediately on some music and assaultive over time on all music. Despite the shoutiness at lower volumes, the tapes did excel with 80s style pop music and electronic music as well. Timbre wasn't terrible, but it was slight, somewhat thin, bright in the upper registry, and had a certain smoothed out, rolled off, dull quality to it, despite the treble extension actually sounding quite good. However, in the end, I could not call the tapes natural. Instead, the word plasticky comes to mind. Since electronic music generally uses synthetically produced sounds, these genres were not as bothered by the tape's timbre issues. Another drawback of this unit was that its separation wasn't particularly stellar. It's not like there was a smearing going on here or anything like that, it's just that the individuation between instruments was not great. I didn't think that separation was particularly good on the singers either, and the tapes have a similar amount of auditory distinctiveness, but they might actually be the worst of the two sets in this department. Soundstage on the tapes was less restrictive compared to the singers though, which made sense considering the singers are a bullet-sized IEM and the tapes are a full-sized one. However, the general soundstage was also relatively average on the tapes. Transients were more accurate on the tapes, and their overall presentation was also more effervescent and somewhat more fluid than the singers were. Integration between the dynamic driver and the magnetostatic was slightly worse on the tapes, but neither set has particularly well integrated drivers, in my opinion. Additionally, the bass on the tapes was notably bombastic and all over the place, whereas the bass on the singers was somewhat more predictable. Unpredictably, the bass on the tapes would go hog wild on certain tracks, while remaining balanced on others. When I was experimenting with tips and I would switch to a wider board silicone, the bass would become imbalanced and overemphasized. In the end, there were a lot of consistencies between the tapes and the singers due to their shared driver tech, but there were also some notable differences as well. Overall, I would say that both IEMs lack general resolution despite displaying details decently well. The tapes were generally brighter, more shouty, more fatiguing than the singers as well, but nevertheless had better transients, liquidity, and a bigger scope to their stage. Between the two, I would pick the singers though, as they were the more tolerable of the two sets to my ears, despite both IEMs having some flaws. Originally, after hearing these two first attempts, I thought, if these are good examples of the magnetostatic driver and what it's capable of, then I'd say count me out for the future. Furthermore, I thought, their timbre is ultimately too dull, and they simply aren't resolving enough to even be misidentified as electrostatics in my eyes. But alas, I guess my memory has proven to be a short one, and I'll be taking a chance on the Tape Pro. And I do hear that they are much better. But in any case, I will let you know. In terms of the OG tapes, however, I would say that they are lackluster and ultimately not worth their price at between $100 and $120. But we'll cross our fingers for the new model nevertheless. And just a reminder guys, at the 1,000 subscriber mark, I'll be doing another drawing for another set of KOS KSC 75s. So make sure to subscribe here on YouTube and follow the neighborhood across all platform locations. Links will be provided in the description below. And with that, I'm out for now.